Okay, check. What's going on, guys? It's your boy Jay Will, and we're back with another video, but this time it's a little bit different. There's not going to be a bunch of fancy editing tricks and GIFs. I know you guys love them, but I think this time, sometimes it's good to have just a straight nuts and bolts video that gives just nothing but facts. So that's what we're going to try to do today. What basically we're going to do, this video is going to be for beginners or people that have heard of sync licensing but have never tried it before, or maybe have dabbled in it just a little bit. I'm going to show you my step-by-step process of how I went full-time making music through sync licensing. And what's cool, hold on a second. While we were setting up this video, I literally got a sync placement while we were setting up. So like, this stuff is real, guys. I just want to let you know, like, this stuff is not a game. So if you already make expensive sounding music, this is going to be very valuable for you. All you need to do is make sure that your music is dope and you have a decent internet connection. Anybody can do this, okay? I'm going to teach you how to fish. It's going to be a decent sized video, but I guarantee you if you listen to the end of this, you'll have all the tools you need to start making a real living off of your music. And your perspective of how much your music is valued is going to change. So let's dive into it. What's good, everybody? We're back, and I'm going to show you this case study document I made upon myself about how I went from doing music part-time for the longest period, and it being an expensive hobby, and turn it into a $6,000 to $10,000 a month job that I could do consistently. And I did this without spending any money on Facebook ads, TikTok ads, like none of that stuff. Didn't try to go viral on TikTok organically either, and I don't tour anymore. To me, it's always a means to an end. It's a young man's game, and now all I have to do is wake up and make music in my pajamas. So as you can see here, here's some proof. Can I click this? Okay, cool. I actually took a snapshot of what I made last year when it came to sync licensing. So as you can see here, there's a lot of commercials, movie trailers, television shows, a lot of stuff going on. So I wanted to make sure you guys had a little bit of proof before we dive in. So again, if you are into making a real living out of your music, I'm going to show you how I personally did it. And before we dive in, I'm just going to share a little bit about myself. As you may know, my name's Josh Williams. Again, after we're done with this document, you're going to know exactly my personal process for how I left a 9-to-5 warehouse job. I was working at Guitar Center's warehouse during the pandemic, actually, and found the way to do this full time instead of just being a warm body to move boxes, load trucks, and all that kind of crazy stuff. Just so that I could make music for like 3-4 hours before I had to go to sleep and do it again. Like that's not fun. So as you can see, these are the figures that I made last year. All I ask from you in return from this video is to not use this information for evil. Okay, if we have any supervillains out there, I understand it's tempting, because after you understand we're changing our mindset and perspective on how much our music is actually worth, the value of it, after we change that, it can, and honestly, it's going to put you in a different tax bracket. Diabolical plans and options tend to pop up. So just keep that in mind. We want to make sure that we use this for good, not evil. Here's even more proof that this stuff is actually real. Here's another email that I received last week. It was for a brief, and this is what they were looking for. And as you can see here, the budget was $7,500. Okay. And that's per episode. And this is for a theme song. Okay. So if that song is being played for a small, like, let's say it's a Netflix series for like, I don't know, 8-episode run, that's $60,000 every time that, or for each season that gets used. Okay. So there's real money in this, guys. It's absolutely absurd. So let's get focused. Turn off all your distractions. I want you to really lock in with me. This document's a bit lengthy, but again, it's going to give you all the information you need to actually start doing this on your own. So I want you to rip this method. Okay. Pretend like we're in a studio session, phones off. Let's get in. So this document is essentially for anybody that, if you're a music producer and you're tired of selling your music for less than $200 a piece, this is definitely for you. That I was in that same predicament before I really dove into sync licensing myself. I really felt like I had put in the time to learn how to make music that sounded decent. So I wanted to get better than decent prices for it. If you have invested thousands of dollars into the right gear, I'm swimming in music gear that I have to use every day. And if you want the pro stuff, it's going to cost you a pretty penny, right? So it's crazy to have all this gear and only get paid $30 to $200 per instrumental track. Like, that's wild. That doesn't even pay for one of my speakers. So if you've invested into the right gear, you've tried promo, and you've only had maybe a handful of people actually listen to a Spotify release, this is definitely for you, okay? Because you don't need to be famous in order to get into sync licensing. If you're an indie artist, this works for artists as well, and you're sick of posting on social media trying to fight for attention, this is definitely for you. After working a 9 to 5, hopefully you haven't sat in the parking lot and kind of thought to yourself like, yo, like I have plenty enough talent to do what I really want to do for a living and just haven't figured out the right opportunity. This is definitely for you as well, because there's a lot of merit that gets used that is necessary in order for you to really get into sync licensing. Just waiting for that one video to get noticed by a mass amount of people. It might not even be the right video. Like, your music might just be in the background. No one pays attention just because the visuals are way more captivating. You don't want to have to deal with all that. Okay. Sync is for you. If you still need help doing that, if you go to family gatherings and you hear that saying, hey, you still doing that music thing? That pisses me off. Yes, because you've been doing it all your life. Like, why wouldn't you be doing it? Or if you're just tired of hearing the stereotypical starving artist being labeled with you, this is definitely for you. Okay. Now let me show you who this training is not for. So if you're too busy creating, if you're an artiste, if you're too busy creating art and not making money, this is not for you. Okay. If you're in the music industry, you are, regardless of what anyone tells you, you do have to lean towards the mass audience if you want to make an actual living off your sound. If you're a music creator that's looking for a quick cash grab, this is also not for you. If you want to build anything that's long lasting, especially when it deals with wealth, you're going to have to take some time. Rome wasn't built in a day, right? If you just want to screw around and play the traditional social media game and wait until something pops off on TikTok to get famous with, this is not for you. Okay. Music is definitely something that takes a lot of passion, drive, and discipline. And if you're just trying to go famous like, what's his name, Jake, that's Godspeed, because it's really hard to actually get attention on social media platforms at this moment in time, unless a new one has popped up already. And then if you are not willing to spend at least 2 to 5 hours of effort a week to understand exactly how the music publishing business works, because that's what sync licensing technically is, then this is not for you. Most artists don't understand the business side, and we're going to definitely dive into this very, very soon. So make sure you stay tuned for that as well. But now that we got the pleasantries out the way, let's break down some myths about sync licensing. Here's the truth, okay? When it comes to making a living off of your music, and this was actually a report from Spotify that I found on Instagram, which was crazy, earning a consistent income without being a slave to social media algorithms, right? Or labels that are owning their masters of your songs and things of that nature is totally possible without them, okay? Sync licensing, we can use it to our advantage. And you don't need to be famous. As you can see here, a lot of artists low-key blew up without having a song or a pre-save campaign go crazy. As you can see here, you had Stranger Things that happened not too long ago. One of my favorite cases is Lizzo, because that was also on Netflix and it was being featured. Like, people was dancing to it and stuff in the actual film. And so people was like, oh, this is a bop. And so everybody's like pulling up their phones and Shazamming the song. And then TikTok got a hold of it and then it went like stupid viral. And I'm going to show you some more information on Lizzo soon. But as you can see here, there's a bunch of songs that actually pop off straight from being associated with movies and television. 9 times out of 10, I guarantee you, most of the songs that you listen to today, you probably got introduced to via television. Like, I guarantee it. No one actually goes crate digging anymore, unfortunately. Okay, so let's see here. Yeah, like I was saying before, Lizzo blew up after getting a placement in a Netflix show. The band Fun, if you listen to indie rock in the late 2010s, they blew up from a Glee placement. That was really, really cool. The We Are Young song, that was literally, I want to say 2 or 3 years after they had been trying to open up for different touring artists in New York, which is extremely hard to do. So that snowballed. They ended up getting an SNL placement, a Super Bowl placement, which is crazy. And like, going, because of that SNL placement, no, because of the Glee placement, because it was popping at the time, like a lot of supervisors and other people were listening to it and was like, yo, this would actually work for the video project that I'm working on right now. And so it kind of just caught fire, and they kind of low-key birthed that style of music as far as the genre is concerned. You got other artists as well. Vince Staples, most people don't know, like, he really blew up from sync licensing licensing as well. And when he figured this out, I'm going to share the same techniques that he used in order to get one of his first big placements that was basically, as he had said in an interview, was about the same amount the label was going to pay him for his whole project. He got it off of one placement for like 30 seconds in a Call of Duty commercial. So there's real money in this, guys, and I want to make sure that you understand that if it can happen to them, if it can happen to me, it can happen to you. However, most music creators aren't really capable of seeing this kind of success because they don't have a grasp on the business side of how this thing works, which we're going to talk about first. Then crafting sync ready music. There's a difference between that and music that we make for the masses, as far as with Spotify, Apple Music, Tidal, what have you. And then you have to make sure that you have proper pitch etiquette. Okay, when you're sending your music to certain sync reps and things of that nature, if you have a specific attitude, you're going to get an ick from them. And if you get that reaction 9 times out of 10, they're going to throw your music in the trash before they even listen to it. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to do that as well and make sure you're giving it to the right people. Understanding these things are going to maximize your chances of actually getting a sync placement by like 1,000%. I'm not even kidding. Versus the amount of time it took me. It took me about 18 months to get my first placement, and I've repeated this process, and within 3 to 4 weeks, I've been able to repeat it after kind of understanding the steps. So we're going to try to do that for you as well after we get to the end of this video. But also, if you're still watching this, again, I tip my hat off. You're ready to lock in. So let's go ahead and do it. And hopefully you can not make the same mistakes I made. Cool. Okay. So another mindset change that we need to make is that our music is worth 4-figure minimums at least. Okay. Because we're not dealing with just a song. We're dealing with intellectual property that's being independently used through sync licensing. It's going to be worth way more than a stream on Spotify. And this might not even be as accurate. It might actually low-key be lower. I think it's like 0.004 cents if you're if you're streaming something from the United States. But get this, intellectual property is expensive. If I made some type of new instrument or new invention, in order to file a patent, it's going to cost me about $10,000 to $30,000 if it goes through the first time. Sometimes you'll end up with another $2,000 filing fee because this stuff is legit. You see what I'm saying? And if you're making music on a daily basis, you're coming up with all this IP that you could be licensing off to people that can help them tell a story. So this stuff is very, very important. Just some simple math here. As you can see, 30 seconds of a sync placement is worth $5,000. And how hard is it to convince a stranger to listen to 30 seconds of music? Normally, you only have like a 5 to 10 second window before they skip, right? So if it's not hitting what they're really enjoying, like, you're not going to get that full 30-second stream. And people also easily get distracted. They might be washing dishes for a second and someone calls them. Now they got to stop the song and they might not even get back to it. You see what I'm saying? So like it's just way more challenging to try to actually get people to stream your music. Whereas all you have to do is convince maybe 1 or 2 people in order to get the same amount of money through a sync placement. Okay. And you can do this over and over and over again because you own the music. We're going to dive into more of that business stuff in just a second. The other thing I want to make sure you guys understand is that the music industry is not built for us as indie artists. You probably already kind of are starting to see it or understand it, is that you don't necessarily need a label to actually make a living anymore. And the best way to do it is through sync because you control all the moving parts of your intellectual property. So anybody can do this. Okay. So let's just play devil's advocate here and say that like you actually do get the privilege to get signed to a label that actually has a good deal. Right? Because everyone knows about those 360s being like your worst nightmare of a bank loan. But let's just say the label does sign you and the artist does break and they end up with the song of the summer or whatever, right? And your track was used in that song. They're going to take the master ownership away from you and you're probably just going to get a songwriting credit, which can be anywhere between, they call them points in the industry. And normally it's anywhere between, I don't know, like 10 to 20 percentage points of the actual song. And that's after everybody else takes their cut. So it's crazy how it's not really set up for us. Okay. So like, wait, what is 20% of 0.008 or 0.004 cents a stream? That's like nothing. So in order for it to go like to actually pay your rent, it's going to take a lot of extra effort and streams for you to pay that first month's rent. So definitely want to think about this. Okay, the music industry is not built for indie artists, so that's why we're leaving. This is the big change I want you to have in your mind when it comes to making music. We're leaving the music industry and we're entering into the film industry because there's normally a lot higher value on what we're doing and what we're making there than there is in the music industry. No one, I mean, you think about it, no one actually, like, consumers don't pay for music anymore. So how are we actually supposed to make a living outside of touring? This is the way. Okay. And if you want to be the person that within 6 to 18 months of being able to do this, we're going to break down for you again. We're going to help you understand the business side of things when it comes to sync licensing. We're going to add a couple different tweaks and changes to your music so that it's built better to help tell stories for brands and filmmakers to help you earn 4 to 5 figures per track, okay, per usage of that track. And then we're going to talk about how to get this music into the right hands so that we don't have to convince a million people that, hey, this song, you should listen to my song, okay? You don't need to use ads in order to get into this or any type of weird payola when it comes to like playlisting or radio, if anyone even listens to radio anymore. We don't have to do any of that. This makes it really, really easy. So I'm going to share with you my personal case study. I was touring internationally as a trumpet player for quite some time after I got out of college. It was cool. We was traveling to all kind of different places, but the problem was I was still living paycheck to paycheck and having to work every single weekend. So I never had time to hang out with my friends. I needed a roommate in order to live where I was living at that point in time. And just to make ends meet, it was a grind. It was a hustle. And when you're single and you're young, it's a little bit easier to do, but as you get older, it's not as fun, right? So after I kind of was taking a break from touring, one of the adjunct faculty members from the school I went to, he invited me to one of his concerts, and I found out that it was actually a benefit concert because the guy couldn't pay his health insurance. And so my whole life just kind of flashed before my eyes because it was like, yo, this is your future, okay? Because I studied from him. The only thing that I could get with my college degree in jazz performance was another college teaching job. And I didn't want that. And I was about 26 at the time, so I was about to get off my parents. So again, I just kind of started to make me think like, yo, like where is the funds going to come from when it comes to actually taking care of yourself as an adult? So there's no retirement plan when it comes to making a living with your music. There's no health insurance. If you're not under the age of 24, like we talked about earlier, labels are normally staying away from you unless you have your own audience, right? And like I was saying, if you're not famous, you gotta grind to get famous so that people can actually pay attention to you so that they can stream your song for peanuts. So again, the system is not really built for us. And instead of trying to convince 500,000 people to actually listen to this song for 31 seconds, I only need to convince 3, okay? And after starting to do my own research via Google, I found out that there was not a lot of resources online to kind of figure out how to do this. So I went the next route, which was cold emailing as many music publishers as I can find to kind of just figure out like, yo, what is going on? How can I get my music into TV shows, movies, things of that nature? Because I realized that publishing is where the actual money is. This is how other artists that don't tour anymore are still making income without their music being like mad popular. So that's what I did. I used this information after paying for their time, interviews and things of that nature, just personally for myself. And eventually what happened is after I want to say about 18 months, I got my first placement in a Taco Bell commercial and it paid me about $10,000. And I still own the track afterwards, which is absolutely insane because normally, especially for producers, you get an artist to maybe pay you $300 and it's an exclusive. I got to make another song now. No, I still get to keep it because it's my intellectual property. See what I'm saying? Very crazy. So obviously when I got that check, I was like, okay, how do we do this again? Like there's got to be some type of process we can repeat. And so what I did was I reverse engineered exactly why that song was working. I analyzed it with the picture. I analyzed it with the video. I also kind of started to figure out, okay, whose hands did this track get passed through in order to make this placement happen? And after I figured out basically a dedicated formula for that, just a step-by-step process, I started landing tracks all over the place, as you can see here. I got a chance to work with all these kinds of brands without having to leave my home, which is insane if you really think about it. So after we started doing that, we also had some other side effects because people started streaming my music just from, again, I think this was a Verizon commercial or something like that. And as you can see, it just threw the streams out of the water when it came to my monthly listeners and things of that nature, which was cool because now that I had streaming numbers, I could actually reach out to larger name artists and I have the quote unquote clout numbers to get their attention and collaborate with them, which was really fun. And also, although they're peanuts, I was able to gain mechanical licensing from these tracks as well. Again, without having to do do anything. And then when I started sharing this formula with the homies, they started getting placements too, getting into libraries and different publishers. As you can see here, one of the homies got into a library, I think within like 8 weeks, which was crazy. And here's one of my homies, Q. He ended up getting a $50,000 sync placement, which was nuts. So he's using it to tour and actually like be able to finance his music career, which is exactly what we want to do. And here's another homie that ended up getting some stuff on the MLB not too long ago as well. So after figuring out this formula and the homies starting to get some success from it as well, I used this catalyst system that was built off of just trial and error. Okay. I had to listen to as many commercials that people skip on YouTube all day, right? I had to listen to all kinds of different music to understand what the demand was. I had to interview and pay out of pocket my own money, different industry professionals, so I can understand, okay, who is giving you this kind of music to use on XYZ movies and films and things of that nature. And then also having to get a lot of rejections when I went to them. It was like, hey, I have music that I think you might need. And they were like, nah, son. So this is definitely, and I love this picture because this was my studio when I first got started. As you can see here, I had terrible gear. I was trying to, that's an air mattress on the floor over there. And like, I had all kinds of plans trying to really figure out exactly how this thing worked. And eventually after that research, I was able to upgrade my studio slowly but surely after each and every placement. So this is the studio that you see me in now. As you can see, I'm still using the same mic, which is nice. So let's break this down even further for you. I'm going to show you the process from A to Z, exactly how I did this on an even more in-depth study of the catalyst system I'm talking about. So first thing we need to understand in the music licensing industry is it's kind of like a gourmet kitchen. I love this analogy because it just works. So both environments, the music industry or the sync industry and a gourmet kitchen, they both have environments that blend two main components to produce a refined outcome. When it comes to the kitchen, the environment perfectly balances quality ingredients, right? If you want something that actually tastes good, you have to use good ingredients, with skilled techniques that create a dish that is just, it gives a sensory experience to the customer, whether that be a visual or from the smell, taste, all the senses are going to be popping once that food comes out to them. With sync licensing, it's kind of the same. We need to create an environment that merges insightful understanding of publishing. Okay, those are your techniques, and then using special ingredients when it comes to different types of music that are used to emote different feelings and emotions in order to produce something that perfectly goes with the visual media. If you want that dish served that gets, again, all those senses popping, you need to make sure that you have the techniques to make that music, and then also knowing what elements to use in your music to kind of make the emotional experience come out when it's put under the video. So here's some specific components of the gourmet kitchen that you have to have in order to thrive in the sync licensing industry. Essentially, you have to have the knowledge base. Again, you have to understand how to actually cook. So this could be like a recipe book in an industry, understanding the legalities, the rights that you own when it comes to making music for sync licensing, the operations of how everything works, your cue sheets and things like that. We're going to talk about that in just a second. Then you have to understand you need the right utensils and processes. This is the baking of whatever you're making. Just like when a chef has their preferred knives and pans to make their jobs much more efficient, us as musicians, we have special mics that we like to use to get certain feelings out of our sound, specific instruments, monitors, all these kinds of things are really important. Understanding the structure of how the song needs to be built. These are the kind of things that we need to kind of hone in and make sure that we have, just like with cooking specific things in the kitchen. If something's too hot and you singe it when you're trying to sear a steak, it's not going to taste the same. We need to narrow down exactly why that is and how we can create a repeatable process, which I'm going to show you later. And then finally, pitching etiquette, that's important as well. Knowing when, how, and whom to present the final product to is similar to when a chef is plating their presentation. I used to work in a kitchen doing their social media, and it was very important that their food pictures looked divine in order for them to, when presented to their customers, it just heightened the expectation of how the food was going to taste. So doing that with sync licensing through my system is going to help you as well. So we're going to talk about that extensively, because your role is to allow your food runners, who are basically going to end up being your sync reps that are going to represent your music, to send your music out to the right people, and so that you can stay in the kitchen and cook up more of it. So eventually, after this process gets put into place, you don't have to do as much with the pitching anymore. All you have to do is focus on making more music. music, which is going to be dope. So let's get into the summary breakdown. We're going to understand the business side, which comes from defining what sync licensing is. We need to have a good handle on what we're doing in the industry, okay, and how we operate. We're going to talk about how to monetize the true value of our music as well, and where it can be used in said markets. We're going to talk a little bit more extensively about the process, so how your music needs to be built for sync licensing, because again, it is quite different comparatively to stuff that you hear on TikTok or just the radio. Understanding the purpose of what music you're making for sync is for, because different consumers react to different things. They have different emotions towards different sounds. Understanding that is going to be really key to repeating the process of making sync placements over and over and over again. And then also what things are being looked at in the industry and how to find out. We're going to talk about that. There's some special websites that I like to use. And then putting your music into the best hands for those placements. So your food runners in the kitchen. So after you're finished, you hit the bell, order up, they're going to take them and they're going to give them to the right customers. So understanding who those players are and how to connect with them is going to be important, and also how to systemize that process so that you can have those placements come in passively while you make more music, because now you have a catalog of stuff that's just out there being pitched all at the same time while you're making more music. So the exponential rate of how much you earn from your catalog is going to rise over time. So let me show you how I optimized each stage of this system so that I was no longer needing to be held back by newbie mistakes that I didn't even know I was making. And hopefully after you finish watching this video, you're not going to make either. And finally break free of treating my talent like it was a side piece. So we're going to dump into the business first. So the first thing I needed to understand was exactly what was sync licensing. And the easiest way to kind of understand and explain it is to think of sync licensing as you renting a rental car for a trip. Okay. So brands and filmmakers rent your music to be used under their content. So once a project's life cycle ends, the rights are returned to you. So unlike the traditional music industry where the artists sell their music and they own the masters of their tracks permanently, in sync licensing, you retain both. So you can use that same song on this video, this commercial, or this movie over and over and over again. Sync licensing is kind of like renting a car. So when you go out of town, like maybe Los Angeles or Atlanta, you need a car if you want to get anywhere. So when you go to the car shop, you find the one you want, you pay them a specific amount of money, you use the car, and then let's say for some reason your flight gets canceled and you need the car for another day. You don't just hold on to the car, you need to pay them for the extra day of usage. It's the same with sync licensing. If a film company or brand is renting your music, because you don't own the car, right? You give them like $400 or $500 for a week, and do you just drive away with it? No, you still have to return it. It's the same with sync licensing. A filmmaker or a brand is renting your music out for a specific video that they need it for, and after that cycle is over with, they return that music to you because you're the sole owner of it. Unlike with the traditional music industry, they sell their tracks permanently where they don't own their masters anymore. Sync, you retain ownership of everything, which is really, really nice. Which is totally different comparatively when you think about it, because after they purchase that track from you for maybe $1,000 to $10,000, depending on how big the artist and the budget is for them, they own it forever. You don't get to see anything after that. And then on the flip side, which is crazy, let's say Drake buys one of your tracks, or as a songwriter or an indie artist, another artist is like, hey, I really love this song, I'd love to purchase it from you. That song is going to die within 3 months, I guarantee it. The shelf life actually of one of the most popular songs, which was One Dance, it was in a case study not too long ago, the popularity got to half-life within 59 days. So not even 2 months go by and the song is half as popular as it used to be. So again, if you think about it, what's the last Drake song you listened to off his last album? What was it, CLB? Like, no one knows. Like, there's too much music that we're getting force fed on a regular basis to have those kinds of things be memorable for us. So it's really incredible how saturated the market is when it comes to artists trying to vie for people's attention, which is why we don't play that game. But on the flip side, when it comes to sync licensing, the market's never saturated because there's so much new video content that needs to be made. Okay. So you got movies, television shows, video games. It's absolutely insane how much is needed. And if content is king, music is queen. So stuff in pop culture changes also all the time, which means that you're going to need new music regardless, because people don't listen to, let's say, swing music from the 20s casually anymore, right? And it seems like hip hop's going into that realm as well when it comes to what's popular today, what most people listen to. So something to keep in mind. Here's another case study of one of my songs that I personally had released after I found out it got a placement. It ended up getting a couple extra placements later down the road, which was cool. And what's crazy, this song has actually earned me 5 figures since then. I'll have to update this slide later, but it only took me 4 hours to create because it's lo-fi. You can go to Spotify right now and listen to it. Like, it took me less time to make than it took me to upload and add all the things it needed in order for it to get synced. So as long as you own 100% of your masters and your composition side, you can get these kinds of placements as well without any other issues. Normally the how much you get paid per placement can vary, but normally what I've personally seen is about anywhere between $3,000 to $5,000 per placement on the average. Now, if you get a larger budget television show or a movie, things of that nature, you're normally going to see anywhere between $5,000 to $10,000. And here's some other places that your music can be used. As you see here, we got live TV, recorded TV. So this could be anywhere between documentary film to reality television shows. Now, reality television and sports are crazy because they can literally use up to 90 to 200 pieces of music in one episode. I've personally seen it myself. It's absolutely wild. If you just sit back and actually listen to what's going on instead of watching television, you'd be surprised. As you can see here, we got movie trailers, which is dope. And normally the budgets are higher because the return on investment is much higher as well. Like, you hear these crazy numbers like Barbie made like $1 billion at the box office. Like, I'm sure promo costs when it came to promoting that movie so that they can make that kind of revenue. There's money in there for your track. Trust me. You got video games, and a lot of people think that most people are thinking of the video games for consoles, but more than 40% of the market is actually coming from our phones. So think about that as well when it comes to different places your music can be used. You got online ads, like I was saying before, those YouTube commercials that you normally are trying to skip. Those are making money. These are all stuff that people approved and paid money for. Sponsored posts that you hear on TikTok and Instagram, they have dedicated music libraries that they use and that are already paid for via blanket license, which essentially means that everybody in that library is going to get paid a percentage for how much that whole catalog gets used. You got music videos, which is a weird one. So if we were shooting a music video and we had something playing in the background that wasn't actually part of the feature, like, someone needs to get paid for it because technically it's your music tied to that picture. And as long as there's music with some type of motion picture, it's technically a sync placement and someone needs to be compensated for it. So if I had music behind this, technically that would be a sync placement. Employee training videos, educational videos, group seminars, all this kind of stuff. Again, if there's music behind some type of video, it's technically a sync placement, which is crazy. One of my homies actually ended up getting one of these placements with a university that was tied to a bunch of different ones in the state. So, like, for instance, with University of Missouri, you got Rolla, Kansas City, University of Missouri, St. Louis, and they had to play that video at all those different branches of the university. So they ended up getting paid 4 times for the same video. So anytime it gets aired or used for things like that, you get paid, which is very nice. TV commercials, we kind of talked about that already. Online video libraries as well. So micro syncs is what they call them. So if a YouTuber needs a video for a piece of music for their video, they have to pay a license to use it. And so places like MusicBed, That Pitch, different libraries like that house that kind of music, and they have to pay for it, and that's how you get paid. Also, you have stadium events, which are really cool. So your ring ceremonies, when they come out through the tunnel, those kinds of things. If they have like an athlete intro for different things that athlete's being featured for, those also can give you the opportunity to basically get a sync placement as well. Let's keep moving here. We have making sync ready music. This is the next thing. After we've understood the business side, we need to make sure that our music is actually built for sync. So here's the catch. Not all music fits. It's not all about making chart topping music, but stuff that's functional for the music editors. And that's the biggest thing you kind of have to pay attention to. And what I found is about 15% of popular music that ranks on Billboard charts actually gets synced because 9 times out of 10 it's not built for it. So there's certain things that you have to look out for in order for it to be even eligible. And we're going to dive deep into this. I'm going to dive deep into my process first. I traded watching TV regularly like everyone else into listening to TV for hundreds of hours, just trying to figure out exactly what stuff was being used. I had a bunch of different notebooks that I have laying around just trying to figure out, okay, why did they use this song and what effect does it have while I'm watching it? And so I checked out theme songs, underscores. You have those pesky commercials that we try to skip unintentionally on YouTube. Probably one of those videos came up on this video. They became my textbooks. So starting to really listen back and figure out, okay, this worked because of this reason, why, how fast it was, what key it was in. I got really granular with it. Okay. In sync licensing, music only has two purposes. Okay. We're not trying to shock and awe anyone. We're trying to either help tell a story or sell a product. That's it. Period. Point blank. Okay. So it's as simple as that. Music is so freaking subjective anyway. I'm sure you've heard plenty of times when you're listening to when you're watching TV, you heard something that's like, that's actually kind of whack. I could have made something way better than that. Subjective. Someone thought that it worked and it was probably a little bit more functional, which is why they got the placement. So we're going to talk about that as well. Having your pulse on the market is very crucial. Knowing what they need is incredibly important. So the two ways I found this stuff out was using a website called tunefind.com and another one called ispot.tv. And these are like compasses when it comes to pointing out, these are trends right now that are being used in different television shows. What TuneFind actually does is about 24 hours after an episode airs, they give you a list of exactly what music was used in that TV episode. So you can find out exactly what was going on. You can listen back to it and study it without actually having to sit there and watch the whole television show, which is really cool. iSpot.tv focuses a little bit more on commercials, but they kind of both are starting to do some crossover. So check out those two websites. I'll have them linked down in the description. Why are these tools important? They gave me the insights that I needed to understand what was industry standard when it came to mixing and mastering, to arrangements, all that kind of stuff. Because with content creation at an all-time high, again, understanding what music was being used in these types of films, TV shows, and commercials was paramount. It included everything from quality, the genres that were being used, the style of production, what kind of sonics they were using as far as transition sounds, mixing and mastering, like everything. You have to really understand what was going on. For instance, fun fact, streaming standards for sample rate is 44.1, and broadcast for everything in sync licensing, it needs to be 48,000 hertz. So just one of the things that I found really, really interesting that was starkly different. Something else that I noticed with certain brands, they like to lean towards certain types of styles of music when tracking their choices on their websites. And since these brands use TikTok and Instagram to the best of their ability, they're using music that they knew worked on other platforms. So if that's the style of sound that they normally like, I'm going to listen to a bunch of their videos and find out what they're leaning more towards so that I can be more prepared when I start pitching towards them. So that was really important. Most gurus will actually not tell you this, but they say that anything can get placed. And I would say that's like 85 to 95% true, because music, again, is super suggestive and there is technically a home for everything. But if you want to get results fast, you obviously need to find out where the trends are and make music that way. Because yes, there might be something for a didgeridoo, but how often do you hear that in the regular media? Probably not often. So you need to make sure that if you have something like that, you maybe have it on the side, but make music that fits the genres that are popular today. So for instance, right now, what is being used extensively that I've personally still am seeing today are hip hop, pop music, which can be a generality for a lot of different things depending on the season. You have rock and roll, orchestral music, and then what I've started to see start to creep in outside of like corporate genres are soul and funk music, because it relates to everybody. Again, it gives a specific feeling that everybody can relate to. So that's really, really important. And these are the genres I found to be super successful in order to get results very fast. So if you make this kind of music at a high caliber, you already have a higher chance than most other people when it comes to making sync placements versus someone that doesn't. Also, as you see here, the formatting of the music with the arrangement is going to be important. Some quick things that I found that were influential in me getting more sync placements were 2 or 3 things. The hooks had to be infectiously catchy, because when they're going through music, they're going through hundreds of songs within an hour when they're just skipping through. So you need to make sure that the hook is catchy so that they remember it and they're like, oh, let me scroll up a little bit and let me find the one that I was listening to earlier that was kind of catchy. You need to make sure you have short intros, because again, they're they're flying through music and you need to get to the point as quickly as possible. And then your stinger endings. We're going to talk about this in another video later, but like your stinger endings are going to be important because it helps the music editor actually end the track so that they can skip to the next scene and possibly the next piece of music. If you don't have those definitive endings, it's not going to sound as usable as the next guy that does it. So that was something else that I found very, very helpful in order to make sure that my arrangements fit what the actual filmmakers or the music editors needed. And then when it came to mixing and mastering, I needed to make sure that it sounded up to standard. Most people think that it needs to be Spotify standards, which if you're a music nerd like me and I've looked up the standard LUFS so that your music doesn't get turned down. In sync licensing, it's great because no one cares. If it's too loud, they'll just turn it down. They don't have to, there's no loudness wars or anything crazy like that. So that's extremely helpful as well. Make sure there's stuff changing as often as possible, because if your stuff is starting to sound like a loop, it's not going to be used. Because if someone can predict what's going to happen in your music often throughout the duration of the song, it's not going to be used. They need stuff that sounds different so that they can have more pieces to use in their edit of said video that they're cutting your music to. So what I like to do is make sure there's slight variation or something evolving in an arc every 4 to 8 bars, which is pretty standard anyway if you want to make music that doesn't sound porny. I also noticed that most TV shows that had higher budgets were using songs that had actual lyrics with them. So my indie artists out there, this is your lane, because if they have more to play with when it comes to funding, they want to make sure that that lyric is selling the song. So that's something that you have to make sure that you're doing as well. So let's actually get into that a little bit. What lyrics and titles of songs work? Well, they need to be simple and thematically relatable. So what does this mean? This means making sure that every word that you write down is universally understood, because regardless of race, age, gender, possibly even language, it needs to be understood. Because if they're running a commercial in 3 different countries that have 3 different dialects or languages, if you're using simple language that most people understand, like maybe an English euphemism or things of that nature, they're probably going to use that before they use anything else, because it crosses over. Everyone can still understand the vibe of what's going on. It has to evoke the human experience. So thematically relatable are themes like love. I love this person. I love this product. I love this experience, right? That one song can fit for all those kinds of things if it's universal enough. You have things like swagger, being together, some type of unity, right? Rebellion, especially in this country. From now until the end of time, there will always be a song in every culture about partying. People just like having a good time. So if you have a song like that, I guarantee you probably have a higher success rate of getting something synced as well. And then obviously acting on desires and things of that nature is good for like reality TV shows. And they all were general enough to fit into multiple different placements. So one song could be used in different TV shows and movies just because it's universal enough that someone's way more likely to use it because it fits for, again, this product, this service, this experience that they're trying to show as far as when they're telling their stories. So if a song can fit into a project for a brand, for a romantic TV show and a cool documentary, you've won. Okay, because now that song's making you 4 to 5 figures a year just from being able to fit in different projects, which is what we want. So the more songs that we have that can do that, the more money we're going to make. As you see here, here's another case study just from Lizzo alone. This song was used and was actually, as you can see here, it was actually released in 2016, and now is one of her biggest songs ever. And she re-released it when it got placed on that TV show. And as you can see here, it's been used in all of these different shows. Okay, so you got, because Truth Hurts was a relatable experience for everybody, it was used on Masked Singer, because technically, even though people may have been singing it or whatever on the show, it was on a broadcast and it was behind motion picture. So that's why it was used. It was used on the Eternals movie, BET Awards show, which was crazy, American Idol. Everybody loved the song, so it ended up getting a lot of different spots. This was where it made its biggest run. We talked about that earlier in Netflix's not TV show, Netflix's movie Someone Great. And as you can see here, it even got a bunch of different commercials. So each one of these is like easily, because of the networks and how big their budgets are looking, just from a general hypothesis, they're easily making 5 figures a piece. So I mean, this is $100,000 song easily just in 1 year. And what I also discovered and started to understand was that sync licensing wasn't about making music it was about supporting the stories and emotions that the director was actually trying to show. So again, if you're helping to tell a story or help them sell a product, your music's probably going to be used a lot more often. We're the wallpaper in the background. Okay. Sometimes they'll let it pop. They might throw some color on it, like in the background that I have here, but we're trying to help accent what they're trying to show as far as what storytelling. So now I made us an EP of about, I don't know, 6 to 10 songs, and they were built specifically for sync licensing purposes, for sync placements. Some had lyrics, some didn't. And now I had this work of music that I wanted to get placed, but I didn't know who to give it to. Okay. And so I live in the middle of the Midwest, the mid of mid, and there's no major record labels out here, no production studios where I could just knock on the door and ask, hey, do you know any filmmakers that need any music? I couldn't do any of that. And so I had to start going on the internet and trying to randomly find out how this process works with the business side. So instead of approaching the big names like Netflix directly or their producers or filmmakers that they hire all the time, I decided to focus on music supervisors, because they were, if you look in the credits of every movie or TV show, you will normally find the music supervisors credit in there. And they're the people that are normally responsible for, as you can see here, legal clearances, budgeting, track recommendations, all that kind of stuff. They have normally the final say, because they need to make sure that all the music is legally clearable for them to use. So I started looking up music supervisors on LinkedIn, cold calling a bunch of them, and unfortunately got no response, which I can kind of understand, because they don't know me from Adam. Like, why would they use me and risk their job? Because, for instance, if I for some reason had royalty-free loops in my music, they can end up getting in trouble, because there's a lot of publishing and reputation that's involved with that, and you're not supposed to use that. So eventually, I think I might have sent out like 80 different emails to just different people. I was really hungry, and eventually someone actually hit me back and was letting me know, hey, we can't use your music, because they would end up losing their job because of what I just explained as far as with the ownership of said songs. Like, they're not going to put their neck out for me. They literally would be risking their jobs and giving me a chance, and I didn't want that. And so instead of this, which was again about 95% ineffective, I was able to find a better way. I basically asked the ones that rejected me, well, then where can I send this music so that they can get it into your hands? Who's the middleman that you actually trust? And they pointed into the right direction. They sent me to a sync rep. This is what they told me, because if I could find a music library or a sync agent, that's what they're called, that already knew the music supervisors I was trying to hit up, they could vouch for me. And now my music has an even higher chance of being used, because now they're working with people that they know and trust, right? So music supervisors are bombarded with people like me that have no idea, that are doing this stuff on a daily basis. They don't have time for it. If they see, hey, I think my track can be used in your project that you're working on right now, it's going to immediately go in the trash. They don't know you. And I mean, I feel like that's fair. So essentially what the better way of doing it is to find a music library or sync agent that has established trust with that film production studio or with that music supervisor. They are way more likely to listen to your music as well, because they're constantly needing more in their catalog anyway. So you're the source of music, you send it to them. If they like it, they're going to give you a nice publishing contract for a couple years, and then they'll be shopping your music out for you so that you can go back to the kitchen and make more. Make sense? Because what they do, and the reason why music supervisors actually trust them more, is just because they pre-clear the music so they don't have to worry about it. So there's no illegal samples being used or anything like that. All they have to do is go through their catalog. They like it, they're going to slap it on the video. If it works, congrats, you have a sync placement. They do all the paperwork for you. So after you kind of get into their catalog and their workflow, all you have to do is send them more music. It's incredible. They do a lot of the other work for you as well, as far as the metadata when it comes to making sure that your music is actually being seen in their catalog. They tag it with the right genre, mood, instrumentation, all that kind of stuff, so that you don't have to worry about it and it gets found in their catalogs when they're searching for stuff. They also have a pulse on what the industry needs, which is important. So now you don't have to do as much research anymore when it comes to finding out the right type of music to make, because what happens is a music supervisor is going to go to your sync rep and say, hey, I need something that sounds like this. Okay, and if they start to recognize there's a pattern, people are needing more Doja Cat sounding stuff, they're going to let everybody know, like, hey, we need more of this in our catalog. We have a hole here. And normally that's how you end up finding more of the trends. Because this stuff, people are asking for music for different video projects literally 20, 30 times a day. Like, I'm under exaggerated when it comes to this. So again, it's like cooking a meal that you want everybody to try, but instead of just inviting a few friends over to taste it, a sync rep actually knows enough people to where like they're actually coming to them and trying out different food and different music to try out for their videos. So you want to try to find a way to get your music into more people. This is the way to do it. Find a music library or a sync agent. So instead of me going out to different supervisors and representatives, they were doing the heavy lifting for me so I can stay in the kitchen. And here's the other cool thing. Since they're fighting for me on my behalf, sync reps normally ensure that you're getting the most bang for your buck when it comes to making a fair deal 9 times out of 10, because normally they're working for commission. We don't pay them if they don't get a sync placement. That wouldn't seem fair. So they're hustling to make sure that they can make sure that our music has the best home possible and for the greatest amount each time it's used in a video. So if they don't get placed, if my music doesn't get placed, they don't get paid, which is, I think, fair. Each of us are mutually invested into the monetization of that song. So the more I make, the more ammo they have in the chamber to try to find different places for it to get used. By using Google and LinkedIn, I was able to find a multitude of different sync reps that were looking for music that I made, which is really important to make sure you're doing, instead of just finding some random ones and just giving your songs to them. And going through that process of elimination of finding which ones were making recent placements was very important as well. After I found ones that I felt pretty confident with, based on the personality, the merit of placements that I already gotten, and just the general vibe of what they were doing at their company, I sent them music and they ended up listening to it and offering me a publishing deal, which basically means that they would rep my music for a specific amount of months or years and basically would represent it for different placements. And over a couple months, I ended up getting my first placement, like I was mentioning before, for 5 figures without having to negotiate any other deals. They did everything for me. They just sent me an email and said, hey, congrats, you got a placement, like the one I just showed you at the beginning of this video. I didn't have to schmooze with anybody. I didn't have to negotiate or know some type of Hollywood agent or anything crazy like that. And I didn't have to fight for attention on a label. It was just the music that someone needed at that specific time, which is great. This, my friends, is the new improved way to operate as a successful music creator in the 21st century, in my opinion. This is where it becomes passive, okay? The more music you make that's built the way we were just talking about, the more often you're going to start getting placements randomly, okay? And the more music you have, the more potential that builds. Because now you don't have to worry about pitching and trying to send your music out to the right people. You have people doing that for you. So now you can spend even more time making better sounding music. Because now I was able to spread those seeds out into the ethosphere and end up with, you don't necessarily need to be tied to only one sync rep. You can have 3, 4, or if you have the amount of time, you can be tied to even more sync reps so that your music's being pitched all at the same time everywhere. And that's where it becomes passive. And randomly also, as we talked about, you get the upfront fees, and then the back end royalties is really great. So when you're signed up to a PRO, which is a performing rights organization like BMI, ASCAP, SOCAN, things of this nature, what's going to happen is after that show is aired, they're going to get a notification that, hey, this music was used on this television show for this amount of seconds. They're going to have you already in the register, and they're going to send you another check because it was broadcast. So you're getting paid twice for the same song. It's literally the definition of compound interest over time. The more music you make, you're going to end up with a larger amount of revenue when it comes to your songs getting placed over time. And honestly, this is what poured gasoline on the fire and helped me to start to actually leave my terrible, monotonous job working at a warehouse for a Guitar Center, and again, reaching a different tax bracket, which was great because I was able to not only make music from home, but anytime I still love playing live, but I only do it when I feel like it, instead of, oh man, like this person in the studio is always a jerk, like I don't want to have to go here for 4 hours just because I need to make rent, or oh, I got to play this wedding gig for 5 hours, which isn't really fun when you're playing the same songs over and over again and you're putting cold dead metal to your face the whole time. So it was great to be able to play shows when I felt like it instead of because I had to. It's just a different perspective. Your music actually even changes. I had more control over my time, and as you can see here in this case study, I was able to build a sustainable career that was actually legitimate when it came to music. And actually, after I obtained and saw some of these things, something deeper kind of started to come up from my subconscious, which was I wasn't really pursuing doing music full time. That's not what we actually want as music creators. We want to have the freedom to make music whenever we want, which is a little bit different when you think about it. Freedom to create whatever we want, whenever we want. Like all I have to do now is just wake up and make music. Like, I don't have to, rent is paid. You see what I'm saying? Because most of us are, as music creators, would take the sacrifice to have a lower income to do what we love anyway, as long as we have the basics of life: food, water, shelter. So when I figured out that was actually what was going on when it came to actually not having to worry about the basic necessities, that's when my music actually ended up getting better, just because I had more time to practice at it, and I didn't have a sword hanging over my head to where like things were due, and I didn't want to have to take the walk of shame back to my job. So until I learned how to monetize my music with sync licensing, I honestly don't think I would have ever gotten out of the rat race when it came to trying to fight for attention in the music industry. In order to truly possess that freedom we just talked about, and eventually you're going to have to convert that too. Whether that's today, tomorrow, 6 years from now, nothing else really, in my opinion, works when it comes to actually making a career off of your music the most efficient and easiest way possible. So now that you understand my process, I got an offer for you. As you can see here, I've taken all the things we just talked about and systematized it in a way that you can use even faster, because now you don't have to do all the research I had to do. It's called the 4-week Indie Sync Catalyst Program. If you are a music producer, an indie artist, a person that's just incredibly exhausted with making music for 12 people to stream it on Spotify, even though it sounds really, really dope, and are trying to actually make a living off of your music, you probably tried to do the ad playlist saving thing and all that kind of stuff, this is for you. And to prove all the naysayers that they were wrong to have a backup plan from your music hobby, your expensive habit, we don't need that anymore. This is for you. And if you want to start making 6 to 10K a month off of your music without being TikTok famous, this is for you. My team and I use this Catalyst system to replicate the exact process we were just talking about before, with even less friction and a fraction of the time, because again, we've done the research for you. We've had the ability to bring in music supervisors and sync agents to listen to your music as well, to make sure it's refined and built the perfect way, so that when you start pitching it to other sync reps, you already know what you're doing, and you're much more likely to get not only a publishing agreement signed, but also a faster way to getting sync placements. Because after you get in, you still need to make the right kind of music. We make sure you do that all before you even start sending it out. Here's some of the clients that have gone through the program already, scoring for different commercials. And as you can see here, one of the homies literally, I think just earlier this year, for the last football season, they ended up getting some really, really cool sync placements with sports. So this stuff works, as you can see here. And here's the deal. If you want to see similar results as some of the clients that we've had thus far, again, using the same structure and process that we talked about earlier in this video, along with listening feedback every week to make sure that your music is vetted by industry professionals like music supervisors that are actually the ones making the decisions. Their ears are a lot more expensive than mine. So I can tell you from my personal experience, but they're the ones that are making the decision. So we offer both to make sure that you're confident that your music is built and ready to go, and it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So if you think that this process is something that you can use, make sure you hit the link in the description, book a call, and we'll make sure that you're a good fit for the program and the private community that we run to make sure that everybody has what they need. And if it's not a good fit, I'll make sure I point you in a better direction. Thanks guys for listening. Appreciate your time, and I hope to catch you soon.